Far out at sea, the water is as blue as the petals of the loveliest cornflower, and as clear as the purest glass. But it is very deep, deeper than any anchor cable can reach. Down there the sea folk live. At the very deepest spot lies the Sea King's palace. He had 6 lovely children, but the youngest one was the most beautiful of them all. Nothing made her happier than to hear about the human world above them. The old grandmother had to tell all she knew about it. "When you complete your 15th year," grandmother said, "you will be allowed to rise up out of the sea, sit in the moonlight on the rocks and watch the big ships that sail past. You will see forests and cities." None of the princesses was as full of longing as the youngest one, the very princess who had the longest time to wait and who was so quiet and thoughtful. At last she reached the age of 15. "There, now we've got you off our hands," her grandmother, the old queen mother, said. "Come here, let me deck you out like your other sisters." And she placed a garland of white lilies in her hair. "Goodbye," she said, and rose so light and clear, like a bubble through the water. The sun had just set as she lifted her head above the surface of the water. But all the clouds were still gleaming like roses and gold, and the sea was absolutely still. On it was a large ship. Then the waves became stronger, large clouds appeared, and there was lightning in the distance. At one moment it was so pitch black the little mermaid couldn't see the slightest thing. But when a flash of lightning came, everything was so clear once more that she could make out the ship. She saw a young man falling off it. She managed to reach the young man, who was hardly able to swim any longer in the stormy sea. He would have died if the little mermaid had not come to his aid. She held his head above water, and then let the waves bear her and him wherever they wanted. When morning came, the bad weather was over. She now saw the mainland ahead of her. She swam over there with the handsome man and laid him down on the sand, but made sure that his head lay high up in the warm sunshine. The man had to be a prince, she thought, for he is so beautiful. Then the little mermaid heard voices and hid. She watched to see who came out to the poor prince. A young girl came to the spot. She seemed to be quite shocked, but only for a moment. Then she fetched some others, and the mermaid saw how the prince recovered and that he smiled to all of those around him, but not out to her, for he did not even know that she had saved him. She felt so sad, and when he was led into the large building, she dived sorrowfully down into the water and sought her way home to her father's palace. Her sisters asked her what she had seen the first time up above, but she did not tell them anything. She was too sad. Many an evening she rose up to the spot where she had left the prince, but she did not see him, and therefore she was always even sadder when she returned home. Finally she couldn't bear it any longer, and told one of her sisters, and soon all of them had got to hear of it, and they told their friends. One of the mermaids knew the identity of the prince. She had also seen the festivities on the ship, knew where he came from, and where his kingdom lay. "Come, little sister," the other princesses said, and with their arms round each other's shoulders they rose in a long row out of the sea. Now she knew where he lived, and she went there many an evening and night on the water. She swam much closer to the land than any of the others had dared. She came to like human beings more and more, and she wished more and more to be able to rise up among them. "I would give up my whole life just to be a human being for one day," the little mermaid said. "I know what you want, all right," the sea witch said. "It's very stupid of you, but you shall have your will even so, for it will bring you great misfortune, my lovely princess. You want to get rid of your fish's tail, and have 2 props instead, to go around on just like human beings, so that the young prince can fall in love with you. I will prepare a drink for you. Before the sun rises you must swim with it to where there is land. Sit down on the shore there and drink it. Then your tail will split and contract into what humans call legs. But it will hurt you. It is as if a sharp sword passes through you. Everyone who sees you will say you are the loveliest human child they have ever seen. You will keep your floating walk, but each step you take will be like threading on a sharp knife. Are you prepared to suffer all this? For then I will help you." "Yes," the little mermaid said with a trembling voice. "But remember this," the witch said. "Once you have assumed human form, you can never become a mermaid again. If you do not gain the love of the prince and marry him, your heart will break and you will become foam on the water." "This is my wish," the little mermaid said, and was deathly pale. "But you must also pay me," the witch said. "You have the loveliest voice, but that voice you must give to me. Even then you will be beautiful enough to captivate a human heart." "So be it," the little mermaid said, and the witch fetched her cauldron to boil the magic potion. The witch kept adding new things to the cauldron. She made a deep scratch in her breast and let her black blood drip down in it. Finally the drink was ready. It looked like the clearest water. The little mermaid thanked the sea witch and swam past her father's palace. It felt as if her heart would break from sorrow. She would never see her family ever again. Then she rose up through the dark blue waters. When the sun appeared, she downed the fiery sharp drink, and it was as though a two-edged sword went right through her fine body. She fainted and lay as if dead. She felt a searing pain when she woke up, but right in front of her the handsome young prince was standing. She lowered her eyes and saw that her fish's tail was gone, and that she had legs. Then the prince took her by the hand and led her into the palace. Every step she took was as if she was treading on pointed needles and sharp knives. But she put up with this gladly, for she was finally with her prince. Day by day the prince became more dear to her. He was fond of her as one can be fond of a good, dear child, but it never occurred to him to make her his queen. A year passed. One day the prince said, "I must travel. I must see the beautiful princess of a land not far from here. My parents insist on it, but I cannot love her. If I ever had to choose a bride, it would be the girl that saved my life." The next morning the ship entered the harbor of the magnificent city of the neighboring king. Then they saw the princess. The little mermaid had never seen a fairer creature. "It's you," the prince said, "you who saved me when I lay like a corpse on the shore." And he embraced his blushing bride. That very same evening the bride and bridegroom boarded the ship. Many colored lamps were lit and the sailors danced merry dances on the deck. Never had the little mermaid danced so wonderfully. It felt like sharp knives in her fine small feet, but she did not notice it. It was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. She knew this would be the last evening. She would see the deep ocean, the star-studded sky, and the prince. It grew quiet and still on board. Everybody was sleeping, except for the little mermaid. Then she saw her sisters rise up out of the sea. They were pale as she was. Their long beautiful hair no longer fluttered in the wind. It had been cut off. "We have given it to the witch so that she can bring help and prevent you from dying this night. She has given us a knife. Before the sun rises, you must plunge it into the prince's heart. Then you will become a mermaid once again. Hurry! Either he or you must die before the sun rises." The little mermaid walked towards the tent where the prince and his bride were sleeping. She bent down, kissed him on his handsome forehead, looked up at the sky where the dawn grew stronger and stronger. Then she looked down at the sharp knife and once more fixed her eyes on the prince. The knife shook in the mermaid's hand, but then she flung it far out across the waves, which gleamed red when it fell, so it looked like drops of blood trickling up out of the water. Once more she gazed at the prince with half-glazed eyes, rushed off the ship down into the sea, and felt her body slowly dissolve into foam. On board the ship there was noise and life once more. She saw the prince with his lovely bride searching for her. Sadly they stared at the bubbling foam as if they knew she had thrown herself into the waves. The little mermaid smiled and blew the couple kisses to wish them all the luck in the beautiful world above the sea. The end.